After hopelessness, there is so much hope, and after darkness, there is much brighter sun. These words are from 13th century poet Rumi. It was written on the boxes of medical aid, which was sent to the United States from Turkey by 2 Turkish cargo planes. Now, this reminded me a news which I read last month in April 2020. It was about a medical aid from the United States to YPG groups in Syria, which was said to be $1.2 million in worth. And let's see who they are.
Have you ever heard of the PYD?
I have, yes.
Who are they?
They're a Kurdish group, one of several, a number of.
Have you heard of the YPG?
I have heard of them also.
Who are they?
Another Kurdish group.
Aren't they the military wing of the PYD?
They are, yes.
Is that right, General Dunford?
That is correct.
They're a leftist Syrian Kurdish political party founded in 2003. Reports indicate that they're aligned or at least have substantial ties to the PKK. Is that true?
Yes, we haven't.
Is the PKK a terrorist organization in the eyes of the Turkish government?
The PKK is a terrorist organization not only in the eyes of the Turkish government, but in the eyes of the U.S. government as well, Senator.
Hello YouTube. This video is about the sprit of alliance between the US and Turkey, and this is Biscuit. What was the picture of Turkey in the eyes of the United States administration for quite a long years? A weak and dependent economy to outside, a free market and a legal regime for the benefit of multinational companies, and by all means a dependent army power to NATO. And this has been a very general view on Turkey. Now, it's clear that US relations with Erdogan, the president of Turkey, has not been going very well for quite a long time. Inevitably, Erdogan had seen this issue and took every measure to resist that. Maybe it will be right to say that it was not the Europe and US allies who were doing plans for Turkey and for Erdogan, but it seems that from the very beginning of his office term, Erdogan had his own plans also. Now we can say that they were underestimating Erdogan and also his supporters. They ignorantly counted their chickens before they hatched them. Both US and some leading European countries had too much trust to their power and also to their plans. I believe that egocentric strategy is not a strategy for all, especially for the alliance. In 2016, there was a coup attempt in Turkey, and its main figure was a puppet religious fact called the Gulen movement. Its leader and some of his followers have been US residents for quite a long time, I think nearly 2 decades, and it's crystal clear that he and his sect was the executor of the coup attempt. And Turkey has been calling for his extradition from US, and US did not do so. So it's natural for Turks to think that the US had known or probably the planner of the coup attempt. Now, set aside everything. Only this belief can be a reason to weaken your ties with the country. Some Western governments have been showing Erdogan as a baddie to their own public, and in Turkey they're kind of playing to the crowd, especially to the opposition groups, but mostly Turkish people observe that her allies are not sincere most of the time. Besides the coup, from time to time President Trump has been threatening to destroy Turkish economy. It's not just implying to destroy, but clearly mentioning and applying to destroy Turkish economy. And well, if you are threatening to collapse a country's economy, you cannot expect to get any support from those people. It's natural. After that threat, it's inevitable for you It's inevitable for any person to become an unwanted person in that country. The Turkish S-400 defense missiles, Turkey bought them from Russia, and that deal between the two countries is another breakpoint. For quite a long time, Turkey had wanted to buy US Patriot defense systems, and US administration never looked very interested with that deal till the agreement of Turks with Russians. After that, the White House began to say, hey, we can talk about the issue, but in the end, we're not going to transfer the know-how of the Patriots. Well, the US administration's promise was too late at that time and not much inspiring for Turkey. First, since Turkey believed that Congress would somehow struck the deal in one way or another. And second, Patriot system has a narrow effect in defense and it's quite old. So Turkey did not say no to the United States, but she refused to break the deal with the Russians. So that made US mad, and they pushed Turkey out of the done deal from the production of F-35 aircrafts. And Turkey was a partner and a producer in that deal. US even refused to deliver the purchased aircrafts to Turkey. These are just a small portion of the problems between Turkey and the United States. Now listen to the ex-presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's words on the relationship between the two countries.
The other day, President Trump walked out onto the south lawn of the White House and said that he'd just gotten off the phone with President Erdogan of Turkey, and he was withdrawing American troops from Syria. And everyone knew that that meant that the Turks would, as they have, launch a military assault into Syria with the purpose of trying to, in their view, contain and quell the Kurds who have been our allies in the fight against ISIS. And sit down with the Turkish government, their representatives, and say, look, your legitimate complaint is that you fear, left unchecked, there will be a Kurdish corridor on your border that will support those elements of the Kurds inside Turkey that you are concerned about and that you have a history of having to deal with their demands for autonomy, the terrorism that goes along with them. Okay, that's your legitimate concern. We have a concern. And let's make sure that you don't go in and through air power and ground assaults murder thousands of Kurds, both fighters and civilians, in your effort to try to prevent terrorism inside your own borders. Let's figure out how we can do this. Let's figure out how we can help you with your problem and how we can protect our allies.
The United States has been clearly funding and arming a terrorist group in Syria and in Iraq, the YPG. YPG has directly bounded to PKK, a terrorist organization which is also considered such by the United States. The US arms have been used by these PKK terrorists against Turkish troops, and it's not an assertion, it's a fact.
Most discussed and most misunderstood is the evolution with our counterpart in Syria, the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces. Now, interestingly, they came about that name because at one point in time, and I dealt with them directly, I was on the formative stage of the relationship with these guys. They formally called themselves the YPG, who the Turks would say equated to the PKK. You're dealing with a terrorist enemy of mine. How can you do that, ally? So we literally played back to them, hey, you got to change your brand. What do you want to call yourself besides the YPG? And with about a day's notice, they declared that they were the Syrian Democratic Forces. I thought it was a stroke of brilliance to put democracy in there somewhere, but it gave them a little bit of credibility, and because they had been branded as PKK, they could never get to the table. So while we paired with them militarily, Brett McGurk was able to keep them in the conversation and allow them the necessary legitimacy to be good partners for us.
And PKK has been conducting terrorist attacks within Turkey since 1980s. Now, let's stop talking about the Turkish-American relations and think about the people and the medicals seeking for masks and other important medical equipment within the United States. Do you think that these policies are for the people of the United States? And what are you doing at this time? What are you going to say for the Turks? Turkish government has been conducting a medical aid operation to 55 countries in the world, free of charge. Now, the question is, what kind of an ally are you looking for? Something like Turkey or what? You decide. And finally, if you would like to support the channel, please subscribe to the channel. And if you have views on this point, please let me know and write your views. If you like it, press the like button. And if you hate it, you can dislike it. Okay. Take care.